The day the sky burned, the Valoran Empire had never lost a war. In 10,000 years, they had conquered 17 star systems and crushed hundreds of species under their rule. Their warships were the most powerful in the galaxy. Their soldiers were bred for combat. Their technology was so advanced that most civilizations surrendered the moment they saw the Valoran fleet appear in their sky. High Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. Earth, a small, unremarkable world on the edge of the galaxy. Its people had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They were children compared to the Valoran Empire. "Begin the standard broadcast," Torvax ordered. His voice was calm and bored. He had done this many times before. His communications officer sent the message to every device on Earth. The message was simple: surrender immediately or face complete destruction. Every species in history had chosen surrender. Torvax expected the same from these humans. 300 Valoran warships hung in orbit above Earth. Each one was larger than a mountain. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a continent. Torvax gave the humans 10 minutes to respond. On the surface below, the world erupted into chaos. In Seoul, Captain Park Jisoo was drinking her morning coffee when every alarm in the city began to scream. She dropped her cup and ran. She was a pilot in the Korean Air Force, but for the past 5 years, she had been part of something bigger, something secret. The Terran Defense Compact. 40 years ago, Earth scientists had detected alien signals from deep space. The world's governments had realized that humanity was not alone, and that the universe might not be friendly. In secret, the nations of Earth had put aside their differences. They had built weapons. They had trained soldiers. They had prepared for this exact moment. Jisoo reached the underground command center beneath Namsan Mountain in 4 minutes. Inside, dozens of officers were already at their stations. The main screen showed the Valoran fleet, 300 red dots surrounding their planet like a disease. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood at the center of the room. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now it was here. "Report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Yoon Hana pulled up the data. 300 enemy vessels, Admiral. They're demanding our surrender. We have 8 minutes before their deadline. Kim looked at the screen for a long moment. 300 ships. Earth had only 40 combat vessels, and most of them were small. By any logical calculation, humanity had already lost. But Admiral Kim had never believed in logical calculations. "Contact all stations," he said. "Execute Protocol Omega, all weapons free." Around the world, hidden installations came to life. In the mountains of Colorado, missile silos that had been dormant for decades opened their doors. In the deserts of China, rail cannons the size of skyscrapers powered up their generators. On the dark side of the moon, General Choi Sang-woo gave the order to activate the orbital defense grid, and in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, something massive began to rise. On the Eternal Dominion, Sub-Commander Lysara frowned at her sensor display. "High Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface." Torvax waved a dismissive hand. "Probably their primitive power grids failing from panic. These lesser species always 10,000 missiles launched simultaneously. They came from every continent, every ocean, every hidden base that humanity had spent 40 years building. Nuclear warheads, thermobaric bombs, experimental plasma charges. The sky filled with fire as humanity sent its response to the Valoran demand." Torvax stared at the screen in disbelief. "Impossible. They're attacking? They're actually attacking." The first missiles hit the Valoran shields. The shields held, but barely. Then the second wave hit. And the third. And the fourth. 17 Valoran ships exploded in the first 30 seconds. Return fire? Torvax screamed. Destroy their cities. Burn their world. The Valoran fleet opened fire. Plasma beams the color of dying stars streaked down toward Earth. Mumbai was hit first. Half the city vanished in a flash of light. Then Singapore. Then parts of Los Angeles. Millions died in minutes. But humanity did not stop fighting down in Seoul. Admiral Kim watched the casualty reports scroll across his screen. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. Continue firing. Everything we have. Admiral, Hana said, her voice breaking. Mumbai is gone. Singapore is burning. We've lost. I know what we've lost, Kim interrupted. And I know what we'll lose if we stop now. Keep firing. On the moon, General Choi Sang-woo activated the rail cannons. These were humanity's secret weapon. Massive electromagnetic guns that could accelerate tungsten rods to incredible speeds. Each rod hit with the force of a small asteroid. The first shot punched straight through a Valoran cruiser in Bizen. Dr. Lee Minji watched the battle from her research facility. She was the chief scientist of the Compact's weapons division, and she had spent 20 years designing tools of war. Now she watched them tear through alien shields like paper. It's working, she whispered. It's actually working. Beside her, engineer Baek Junho was already calculating new firing solutions. We need to target their command ships. If we can cut off their leadership, an explosion rocked the facility. Part of the ceiling collapsed. Junho pulled Minji under a desk as debris rained down around them. They're targeting our infrastructure, Minji said. They know we're coordinating from here. Junho helped her to her feet. Then we move. We don't stop. In orbit, Torvax could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet, the pride of the Valoran Empire, was being torn apart by primitives. These humans used nuclear weapons like toys. They used kinetic projectiles like cavemen throwing rocks. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. "Aye, Commander," Lissar reported, her voice trembling. "We've lost 47 ships. Their weapons are. They're not sophisticated, but there are so many of them. Our shields cannot recharge fast enough." Torvax slammed his fist against his console. "Then we destroy their launch sites. We burn every city until there's nothing left." More plasma fire rained down on Earth. Tokyo was hit. London was hit. Cairo was hit. And still, the missiles kept coming. In a small apartment in Incheon, a young woman named Han Soyeon sat at her computer. She was 26 years old, a programmer who had been called crazy for years. She had believed aliens would come. She had spent 3 years writing a virus designed specifically to attack non-human computer systems. Everyone had laughed at her. No one was laughing now. Soyeon watched the battle through her window. The sky was orange with fire. She could hear explosions in the distance. On her screen, her virus was ready, waiting to be uploaded. She took a deep breath and connected to the defense network. "Let's see how smart you really are," she whispered, and pressed enter. The virus began to spread. The doctrine of overwhelming response. The Valoran Empire had a simple philosophy when it came to war. Strike fast. Strike hard. Make the enemy understand that resistance is pointless. In 10,000 years, this philosophy had never failed. Until now. High Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and watched his empire's greatest fleet fall apart. 63 ships were gone. 63 ships destroyed by a species that had been using wooden boats just a few centuries ago. How? He demanded. How is this possible? Sub-Commander Lissaro worked frantically at her console. Their weapons are primitive, High Commander, but they have prepared for this. They have thousands of launch sites, underground bunkers, hidden bases. Every time we destroy one, 3 more open fire. Then destroy them all. We're trying, sir. But they keep firing. They won't stop. On Earth, the destruction was terrible. 7 major cities had been hit. Millions were dead. Fires burned across 3 continents. And yet, humanity's war machine continued to roar. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood in the Seoul Command Center, surrounded by chaos. Officers shouted reports. Screens flashed with damage assessments. The air smelled like smoke and fear. Status report, Kim said calmly. Lieutenant Yoon Hana looked up from her console. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. We've confirmed kills on 71 enemy vessels, Admiral. Our lunar cannons are operating at full capacity. Missile reserves are at 62%. And our losses? Hana hesitated. Mumbai is gone. Singapore is gone. Parts of Tokyo, London, Cairo, Los Angeles. Estimated civilian casualties are... Sir, we don't know. Millions. Maybe tens of millions. Kim closed his eyes for a moment. Tens of millions. Men, women, children. Gone in flashes of light. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. He wanted to surrender just to make the dying stop. But he knew what surrender meant. The Valoran Empire did not show mercy. Every species they conquered became slaves. Their culture was erased. Their history was forgotten. They became nothing. Kim opened his eyes. Continue the attack. Target their command ships. On the moon, General Choi Sang-woo commanded the orbital defense grid. The lunar rail cannons were humanity's most powerful weapons, capable of punching through almost any shield. But they were slow to reload, and the Valoran fleet was learning to avoid their fire. Recalculate firing solutions, Sang-woo ordered. They're adapting. We need to be unpredictable. His weapons officer, a young man named Oh Kyung-soo, looked up nervously. General, if we fire randomly, we might miss. Then we'll reload and fire again. The point isn't perfect accuracy. The point is to make them afraid. Sang-woo understood something that the Valorans did not. War was not just about destroying the enemy. It was about breaking their spirit. The Valorans had expected humans to surrender. Instead, humans were fighting with everything they had. Every ship the Valorans lost made them doubt themselves a little more. Fear was a weapon too. In Bizen, Dr. Lee Minji and engineer Baek Junho had moved to a backup facility after their main lab was destroyed. The new location was smaller and darker. Just a concrete bunker filled with computers and coffee cups. I've been analyzing the shield frequencies, Minji said, pointing at her screen. Their shields are powerful, but they have a weakness. They operate on a specific harmonic pattern. If we can match that pattern with our weapons, we can bypass the shields entirely. Junho leaned closer to look. Can we modify our missiles in time? Not the missiles, but the rail cannons on the moon can be adjusted. I'm sending the data to General Choi now. Minji typed rapidly, sending her findings across the defense network. It was a small discovery, but small discoveries won wars. In space, Captain Park Ji-soo led a desperate counteroffensive. Earth's combat fleet was tiny compared to the Valoran Armada, just 40 ships against hundreds. But Ji-soo had one advantage the Valorans did not expect. Humans were crazy. The Valoran ships were controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. Vise is calculated perfect firing solutions, predicted enemy movements, and chose optimal attack patterns. They were extremely intelligent, but they thought logically. And humans did not think logically. Ji-soo flew her fighter straight at a Valoran cruiser, waiting until the last possible second before pulling away. The Valoran AI had calculated that she would break off much sooner. When she didn't, its defensive systems fired too late. Her wingman, Lieutenant Shin Woo-jin, followed her lead, weaving through the enemy formation in patterns that no sane pilot would attempt. Their AIs can't predict us, Ji-soo reported over the radio. They don't understand irrational behavior. Use it against them. Across the fleet, human pilots began flying like madmen. They took risks that should have been suicidal. They made maneuvers that defied tactical logic. And slowly, impossibly, they started winning. On the Eternal Dominion, Torvax watched his tactical display with growing horror. His ships were falling. His crews were panicking. His AIs were malfunctioning. What is wrong with these creatures? He demanded. They're losing millions of their own people, and they're still fighting. Why won't they stop? Lazara had no answer. In all her years of service, she had never seen a species fight like this. Most civilizations valued survival above all else. These humans seemed to value something else entirely. Pride, maybe. Or stubbornness. Or just pure burning rage. Whatever it was terrifying. Then the situation got worse. High Commander, a technician reported, we're detecting anomalies in our computer systems. Some kind of infiltration program. Torvax turned sharply. What do you mean? I don't know, sir. Our navigation systems are showing errors. Weapons targeting is becoming unreliable. It's spreading through the neural network. Ansoin's virus had arrived in her apartment in Inchin. Soyam watched her creation spread through the Valoran fleet like a disease. Her virus was simple but elegant. It didn't destroy systems directly. Instead, it confused them. It made weapons fire in the wrong direction. It made engines stutter at critical moments. It made the perfect Valoran AIs become imperfect. Come on, she whispered, watching the chaos unfold. Let's see how you handle a little human creativity. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, alarms began screaming. Two Valoran cruisers collided, their navigation systems providing incorrect data. A battleship's weapons turned and fired on a friendly vessel. A carrier's engines locked up, leaving it drifting helplessly. Torvax stared at the destruction in disbelief. Purge the systems. Get that program out of our network. We're trying, High Commander, but it's adapting faster than we can counter it. The virus was not just a program. It was designed to learn, to evolve, to find new weaknesses and exploit them. Soyan had spent 3 years making it as annoying and persistent as possible. She had succeeded. As the Valoran fleet fell into confusion, humanity pressed its advantage. More missiles launched. More rail cannon shots found their targets. More human pilots danced through the chaos, destroying enemy ships that could no longer defend themselves properly. By the end of the second hour, the Valoran fleet had lost 112 ships. And Earth was still fighting. Admiral Kim allowed himself a small smile. Tell all stations to maintain pressure. We're winning. Hannah looked at him with exhausted hope. Do you really think we can win this, Admiral? Kim looked at the screen, at the burning cities and the dying ships and the impossible battle raging above their world. I think we already have, he said quietly. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to be weak. They were wrong. And now they know they were wrong. That's the first victory. The rest is just cleanup. In space, the cleanup continued. The Empire learned Fear Hour 6 of the battle. The Valoran fleet was trapped. Their hyperspace drives were useless, locked down by a virus created by a 26-year-old programmer in a tiny apartment. Their weapons were unreliable. Their shields were failing. And humanity showed no signs of stopping. High Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and watched his legacy crumble. How many ships remain? He asked quietly. Sub-Commander Lysara checked her console. The numbers were painful to read. 141, High Commander. But less than half of those are fully operational. 141 ships. He had started with 300. In 6 hours, These primitive humans had destroyed more than half the greatest fleet the Valoran Empire had ever assembled. Around him, his bridge crew worked in frightened silence. They had been trained to believe they were invincible. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had never lost. Now they were losing. On Earth, the cost of victory was becoming clear. The initial attacks had destroyed 7 major cities. Rescue teams dug through rubble, searching for survivors. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded. Families searched for loved ones who would never come home. 12 million people were dead. Admiral Kim Do-in knew the numbers. He felt the weight of each life lost pressing down on his shoulders. But he could not stop now. If they stopped, if they showed weakness, the Valorans would recover. They would regroup. They would come back stronger. Status report, he said calmly. Lieutenant Yoon Hana looked exhausted. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she typed. Enemy fleet is attempting to purge the virus from their systems. They're having limited success. Our lunar cannons have depleted 40% of their ammunition. Missile reserves are at 31%. And Captain Jisoo? Still fighting, sir. She's lost 12 pilots, but her squadron has confirmed kills on 17 enemy vessels. Captain Ru's mining fleet has destroyed another 23. Kim nodded. They were winning. They were actually winning against an empire that had never lost. But winning came with a price. Tell Dr. Lee to implement the shield bypass immediately. We need to finish this before they repair their systems. In Bizen, Dr. Lee Minji received the order and began coordinating with the lunar base. Her discovery about the Valoran shield harmonics had been uploaded to every human weapon system. Now it was time to use it. General Choi, she said into her communicator, are the rail cannons ready? On the moon, General Choi Sang-woo confirmed. Ready and waiting, Dr. Lee. We've adjusted the frequencies exactly as you specified. Then fire at will. The lunar rail cannons spoke again. But this time, the tungsten rods carried a special charge designed to vibrate at the exact frequency of Valoran shields. Instead of hitting the shields and losing energy, the rounds passed straight through. The first shot hit a Valoran battleship directly in its reactor core. The ship exploded so violently that it destroyed 2 nearby vessels. It works, Sang-woo said, allowing himself a brief smile. Adjust all weapons for shield bypass. Let's finish these invaders. In space, Captain Park Jisoo saw the new weapons working. Enemy ships that had been nearly impossible to damage were now vulnerable. The tide of battle had shifted dramatically. All squadrons, she broadcast. The shields are down. I repeat, enemy shields are bypassed. Attack with everything you have. Her remaining fighters swept through the Valoran fleet like hawks among pigeons. Lieutenant Shin Woojin destroyed 3 ships in 5 minutes, his weapons punching through hulls that should have been impenetrable. On the Defiance, Captain Ru Tai-young led his mining fleet in a final assault. The old Orahar groaned and shuddered as it absorbed enemy fire, but it kept moving forward. Izu, Tai-young called to his weapons officer. Target that carrier. Use everything we have left. Jang Heezu, the former cook turned warrior, grinned fiercely. Aye, Captain. Sending them to hell with compliments from the mining guild. The Defiance unloaded its remaining weapons. Mining charges, plasma cutters, even chunks of raw asteroid ore launched from improvised cannons. The Valoran carrier's hull cracked and split. Atmosphere vented into space. Then the ship's reactor failed, and another enemy vessel joined the growing cloud of debris. On the Eternal Dominion, Torvax watched the carrier die. It was the 15th ship he had lost in the last hour. Aye, Commander, Lysara said softly. Our engineers have partially restored the hyperspace systems. We can jump, but only 11 ships have functioning drives. 11 ships. Out of 300. What about the neural network? Torvax asked. Can we purge the virus? The virus is too deeply embedded, sir. Even if we escape, it will take weeks to fully remove it from our systems. Torvax stood in silence for a long moment. Outside his view screen, another ship exploded. Human fighters swarmed through the debris like insects, hunting for survivors to kill. This was supposed to be easy. These humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to surrender at the first show of force, like every other species the Empire had conquered. Instead, they had turned his fleet into scrap metal. Why? Torvax asked, to no one in particular. Why do they keep fighting? They've lost millions of their own people. Their cities are burning. Why won't they stop? Lazara had no answer. She had studied human transmissions during the battle, trying to understand their tactics. What she had found disturbed her deeply. The humans were not fighting for resources or territory. They were not fighting for strategic advantage. They were fighting because someone had attacked their home. They were fighting out of pure, burning anger. And anger, she realized, was a weapon more powerful than any plasma cannon. High Commander, a technician reported. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a woman in her 30s, with short black hair and fierce eyes. Behind her, Torvax could see the interior of a small fighter craft. This is Commodore Park Kisasu of the Terran Defense Fleet, the woman said. I'm speaking to the commander of the Valoran fleet. Torvax stared at her. This small creature, in her tiny ship, had helped destroy half his armada. I am High Commander Torvax. What do you want? Jisu's expression didn't change. I want you to understand something. You came to our world expecting slaves. You expected us to kneel. You were wrong. We don't kneel. We don't surrender. And we don't forgive. You've lost millions of people, Torvax countered. Your cities are destroyed. You should be begging for mercy. Jisu actually smiled at that. It was not a pleasant smile. Our cities can be rebuilt. Our dead will be mourned and remembered. But your fleet? Your empire? You're the ones who should be begging. She leaned closer to the camera. You have two choices, High Commander. Take your surviving ships and run. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not to be touched. Or stay and die. We don't care which you choose. The transmission ended. Torvax stared at the blank screen. His hands were shaking. His hearts were pounding. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be prey. Sir? Lasara asked carefully. Your orders? Torvax looked at his dying fleet. He looked at the blue planet below, still firing missiles, still sending fighters, still fighting with absolutely no intention of stopping. He had a choice. Pride or survival. Honor or life. All ships with functional hyperspace drives, he said quietly. Prepare to retreat. We're leaving. The Valoran Empire had never retreated from a battle dot until now. The ghost in their machines. The Valoran neural network was the most advanced computer system in the galaxy. It connected every ship in the fleet, allowing instant communication and perfect coordination. It had taken thousands of years to develop. It was their greatest strength. Now it was their greatest weakness. Han, Soyin's virus spread through the network like fire through dry grass. It was everywhere at once, hiding in backup systems, copying itself into every corner of the Valoran fleet. Every time the Valoran technicians found and deleted one copy, 10 more appeared somewhere else, on the flagship Eternal Dominion. High Commander Torvax watched his empire's greatest fleet tear itself apart. Disconnect the ships, he ordered. Cut the neural network connections. Sub-Commander Lysora shook her head. If we do that, we lose coordination. Each ship will be fighting alone. And sir, The virus is already in individual ship systems. Disconnecting won't help. Torvax felt something he had never felt before in his military career. Fear. Real, cold fear that crawled up his spine and wrapped around his heart. How? He demanded. Their technology is primitive. How could they create something like this? Lasara didn't have an answer. Neither did anyone else on the bridge. The truth was simple, but the Vollarans could not understand it. Humanity had spent centuries fighting itself. Wars between nations. Wars between ideologies. Wars over land and resources and pride. In all those wars, humans had learned one crucial lesson. If you cannot defeat your enemy directly, you attack them indirectly. You find their weaknesses. You turn their strengths against them. You cheat. The Vollarans had conquered species who fought with honor and followed rules. Humanity had no rules. Humanity fought to win and Seoul. Admiral Kim Do-hyun received reports of the chaos spreading through the enemy fleet. Lieutenant Yoon-ha was smiling for the first time since the battle began. Sir, their coordination is breaking down. Ships are firing on each other. Some of their engines are failing. It's beautiful, sir. Kim nodded slowly. Who created this virus? Hannah checked her data. The upload came from a civilian address in Incheon. A programmer named Han Soyeon. She's not military. She's not even officially part of the compact. She just did it on her own. Find her. When this is over, I want to shake her hand. In Incheon, Soyeon was not celebrating. She was working, watching the virus spread and making small adjustments to help it survive. Her apartment was hot and cramped, and she hadn't slept in over 20 hours. But she couldn't stop now. Come on, she muttered, typing commands. Just a little more. Get into their weapon systems. Make them useless. Her phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. She ignored it again. Then a message appeared on her screen. Urgent. Terran Defense Compact. Please, respond. She stared at the message for a moment. Then typed back. Busy. Killing aliens. Call later. The compact didn't call later. Instead, they sent a military helicopter. While Soyeon worked, the battle in space continued. With the Valoran fleet confused and disorganized, humanity's forces pressed their advantage. Captain Park Ji-soo led her squadron through the chaos, targeting damaged enemy ships. Her fighters were small and fragile compared to Valoran vessels, but they were fast and unpredictable. The malfunctioning Valoran A's couldn't track them. Watch your left, Woojin, Ji-soo said over the radio. That cruiser is still dangerous. Lieutenant Shin Woojin pulled his fighter into a sharp turn. I see it. Its weapons are firing randomly. I'll go under it. Negative. Go through the debris field. They can't predict your path if even you don't know it. Woojin laughed, a harsh sound filled with exhaustion and adrenaline. That's crazy, Captain. That's the point. The human fighters danced through the battle like ghosts. The Valoran A is designed to predict and counter enemy movements. We're helpless against pilots who made their decisions based on instinct rather than logic. But the real surprise came from the asteroid belt. For decades, humanity's space mining corporations had been quietly building a secret fleet. Their ships were not warships. They were ore haulers, cargo transports, and mining platforms. Ugly, slow, and completely illegal according to the Terran Defense Compact's official records. That they were armed. Captain Ru Tai-young commanded this unofficial fleet. He was 52 years old, a former military pilot who had spent the last 20 years hauling rocks in the darkness between planets. He had always known this day would come. All ships, he broadcast over a secure channel. This is Tai-young. Remember our training. Remember what we're fighting for. And remember what they did to Mumbai. 40 mining ships emerged from the asteroid belt. They were not graceful or elegant. They had plasma cutters instead of proper weapons, mining charges instead of missiles. Their shields were weak and their hulls were thin, but there were 40 of them, and the Valoran fleet did not see them coming. Taiyang's ship, the Defiance, was a converted ore hauler. It was 60 years old and held together by hope and welding wire. Its crew was made up of miners, engineers, and one very angry cook named Jiang Heisu, who manned the improvised weapons console. "Target the nearest cruiser," Taiyang ordered. "Use the mining charges. Aim for their engines." "Aye, Captain," Heisu replied, grinning with fierce joy. "Let's see how they like a face full of industrial explosives." The mining fleet hit the Valoran flanks like a hammer. The enemy had been focused on Earth, expecting all threats to come from below. They never expected an attack from the empty darkness of space. Mining charges detonated against Valoran hulls. Plasma cutters, designed to slice through asteroids, proved equally effective against alien armor. The Defiance alone destroyed 3 ships in the first 10 minutes on the Eternal Dominion. Torvax received the reports with numb disbelief. More ships? Where are they getting more ships? "They appear to be civilian vessels, High Commander," Lesara reported. "Mining and cargo ships. Modified for combat. Civilians? They're using civilians against us?" "It appears so, sir." Torvax slumped back in his chair. He had invaded hundreds of worlds. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed armies. But he had never faced anything like this. These humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like animals, like a cornered beast that would rather die than submit. "High Commander," Lesara said quietly, "we've lost 160 ships. Our weapons systems are compromised. Our navigation is unreliable. The fleet is—" "We're losing, sir." Torvax closed his eyes. 160 ships. Half his fleet. Gone in just a few hours. Options? He asked. "We can continue fighting and hope to break through their defenses. Or," Lysara hesitated. "Or what?" "Or we retreat, sir. Regroup. Return with reinforcements." Torvax's eyes snapped open. "Retreat?" "The Valoran Empire does not retreat. We have never retreated in 10,000 years. Then we may not survive this battle, sir. The humans, they will not stop. They will keep fighting until we're all dead or gone. I believe they would rather destroy themselves than surrender to us." Torvax looked at the tactical display. Ships burning. Ships colliding. Ships drifting helplessly as their systems failed. His magnificent fleet reduced to chaos and wreckage. And still, the humans kept firing. "Prepare for emergency retreat," he said finally, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "All ships, fall back to hyperspace coordinates." Lesara began transmitting the order. But before the fleet could jump, she received an alarming report. "High Commander, the hyperspace drives won't engage. The virus has infected our navigation systems. We can't calculate jump coordinates." Torvax stared at her in horror. "We're trapped." "Yes, sir. We're trapped." In her apartment in Inchin, Han Soin saw the alert on her screen. The Valoran fleet was trying to flee, but her virus had locked them in place. She smiled and whispered, "Surprise." The message, the Battle of Earth, lasted 14 hours. When it was over, the sky was filled with debris. Broken ships drifted in orbit, some still burning with strange alien fires. The wreckage would take years to clean up. Of the 300 Valoran warships that had arrived expecting an easy conquest, only 11 escaped. The rest were destroyed, captured, or drifting as lifeless hulks. Humanity had won, but victory had a price. 12 million people dead. 7 cities destroyed. Countless families torn apart by loss and grief. The world mourned, even as it celebrated. 1 month after the battle, the Terran Defense Council met in Geneva. The old building had been damaged during the attack, but workers had repaired it quickly. It was important that the world see humanity standing strong. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood before the assembled representatives. He looked older than he had before the battle. The weight of command had left deep lines on his face. But his voice was steady as he spoke. "The Valoran Empire has requested a ceasefire," he announced. "Their ambassador arrived this morning. They want to negotiate." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some representatives looked relieved. Others looked suspicious. After what the Valorans had done, trust was hard to find. President Moon Jae, leader of the World Council, raised her hand for silence. "What are their terms?" Kim almost smiled. "That's the interesting part. They don't have terms. They want to know why. Why what? Why we fought." Their ambassador asked me directly. He said they've conquered hundreds of species, and none of them have ever resisted like we did. He wanted to understand why we didn't surrender when we were clearly outmatched. General Choi Sang-woo, who had commanded the lunar defense, leaned forward. "What did you tell him?" Kim looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the people who had fought beside him. Scientists like Dr. Lee Min-ji, soldiers like Commodore Park Ji-soo, ordinary citizens like Han So-in, who sat awkwardly in the back, still uncomfortable with her new status as a war hero. "I told him the truth," Kim said. "I told him that they made a mistake. They thought we were weak because we were small. They thought we would surrender because we were afraid. But we're not weak. And we're not afraid. We're human. And humans don't give up." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began to build. Representatives who had spent the last month mourning their dead now rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. They had paid a terrible price. But they had earned something precious in return. Respect. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. The Valoran Empire had conquered 17 star systems, crushing every species that resisted. For 10,000 years, those species had lived as slaves, believing that resistance was impossible. The Valorans were too strong. Their fleet was too powerful. Nothing could stand against them. Then they saw what happened at Earth. The battle had been broadcast across the galaxy. Captured communications, recorded footage, censored data from surviving ships. The conquered species had watched a small, primitive world stand against the invincible Valoran fleet and win. If the humans could do it, maybe they could too. Rebellions began on the Empire's oldest colonies. Slave populations that had been peaceful for centuries suddenly rose up against their masters. Valoran garrisons that had never faced real resistance found themselves overwhelmed by waves of angry, desperate fighters. Within 6 months, the Valoran Empire had lost 3 star systems. Within a year, it had lost 7 more. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling, its foundations shattered by one impossible victory at a distant blue planet. And humanity? Humanity kept building. The captured Valoran technology was invaluable. Dr. Lee Min-ji led teams of scientists who worked day and night to understand alien systems. Within months, Earth had functioning shield generators. Within a year, they had hyperdrive-capable warships of their own. Captain Ru Taeyong, the mining fleet commander who had helped turn the tide of battle, became the head of the new Terran Navy's training program. His unconventional tactics became standard curriculum. Human pilots learned to fight crazy, to be unpredictable, to turn enemy expectations against them. Commodore Park Ji-soo took command of the new Terran fleet, her flagship. The Soul was built from salvaged Valoran technology and human innovation. It was smaller than the alien ships, but faster and more agile. Like humanity itself. Han Sion, the programmer who had crippled an empire from her bedroom, was offered a position at the Compact's cybersecurity division. She accepted on the condition that she could still work from home sometimes. Some habits were hard to break. And Admiral Kim Do-hyun, before his retirement, gave one final order. "Build a monument," he said. "Put it on the moon, where everyone can see it. Make it visible from Earth, and put a message on it in every language we know, including Valoran." The construction took 2 years. When it was finished, the monument stood 300 meters tall, a pillar of titanium and stone rising from the lunar surface. At its base were the names of every person who died in the Battle of Earth. At its top was a light, powered by captured Valoran technology, that shone bright enough to be seen from any point on Earth's surface. And on its face, carved in letters large enough to read from orbit, was the message: "We came in peace. You chose war. Remember this." The galaxy remembered. 5 years after the battle, a delegation from one of the former Valoran slave species visited Earth. They were the Calorians, a gentle people who had been conquered 3,000 years ago and had long forgotten what freedom felt like. Their leader, an elderly female whose name translated roughly as Hope, stood before the Terran Council and wept. "You saved us," she said. "Not with your ships or your weapons. With your example. You showed us that the Valorans could be beaten. You showed us that we didn't have to be slaves anymore. Our children will grow up free because of what you did." President Moon, now in her second term, smiled gently. "We didn't do it for you. We did it for ourselves. We were protecting our home." Hope wiped her eyes. "That's what makes it even more meaningful. You weren't trying to be heroes. You were just refusing to surrender. And in doing so, you became heroes to 1,000 worlds." The story of Earth spread across the galaxy. It became legend, then myth. The small blue planet that defied an empire. The primitive species that fought with rocks and fire, and somehow won. Some versions of the story exaggerated human capabilities. They said humans were immortal, or that they could see the future, or that they fought with no weapons at all, killing enemies with their bare hands. These versions were not accurate, but some versions of the story simply told the truth. They said humans were stubborn, clever, creative, absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. Those versions were accurate, and those versions scared the galaxy the most. Because technology could be matched. Numbers could be overcome. But spirit? Determination? The simple, stubborn refusal to lose? Those could not be defeated. Admiral Kim died peacefully in his sleep, 15 years after the battle. He was given a hero's funeral, his ashes scattered in orbit above the Earth he had defended. His last words, recorded by his daughter, were simple. "We did good. We kept them safe. I can rest now." Commodore Park Jisoo, now Admiral Jisoo, continued to command the Terran fleet for another 20 years. Under her leadership, humanity expanded into space. Establishing colonies and building alliances with the species they had helped free. Han Soin eventually did leave her apartment, but only because she needed a bigger one to hold all her equipment. She spent the rest of her life creating defenses against digital threats, earning the nickname the Ghost for her ability to infiltrate any system and disappear without a trace. And the monument on the moon stood watch over Earth, its light shining through the darkness, its message visible to anyone who dared approach. "We came in peace. You chose war. Remember this." The galaxy remembered. And they never forgot.